time once again for Community Forum, and we are very lucky to have with us live in the studios this morning Dr. Jill Stein. Dr. Jill Stein is a physician, environmental health advocate, and former teacher of internal medicine. She is the co-author of 2 reports, In Harm's Way, Toxic Threats to Child Development, and Environmental Threats to Healthy Aging. She ran for governor of Massachusetts in 2002 on the Green Rainbow Party ticket, and again on the Green Rainbow Party ticket for Massachusetts State Representative in 2004, and for Massachusetts Secretary of State in 2006. She is co-founder of the Massachusetts Coalition for Healthy Communities and was also a member of the National and Massachusetts Boards of Directors of Physicians for Social Responsibility. She's a member of the Massachusetts Medical Society and Physicians for a National Health Plan. And she was the Green Party's 2012 candidate for President of the United States and is currently exploring a run for president in the 2016 elections. Dr. Jill Stein, thank you very much for coming and spending time with us again this morning.
It's so good to be with you as always, Mike.
So start out, tell us, what brings you to Seattle?
I'm here in Seattle to support Kshama Sawant's re-election campaign, which is kicking off formally tonight, actually, and I encourage people to come out for that. This campaign is important, I think, to all of us. The things that Kshama and Seattle are struggling for here, for living wages, for affordable housing, for asking the wealthy to pay their share and using that to fund critical services in society. These are things we are all struggling with. So I'm here to support Seattle and Kshama in leading the way forward.
Very good. And you're also doing a forum later today at the Labor Temple as well.
That's right, yes, and encourage people to come to that. We'll be having a very exciting dialogue going on for most of the afternoon, starting at, I believe, starting at 1. Okay.
1 to 4 at the Seattle Labor Temple. So we'll plug that again at the end of the half hour.
Great.
So 2012, you ran for President of the United States, and what were the issues back then that had motivated you to run, and are they the same issues that you are having to wrestle with now?
Exactly. I think it's the issues confronting us as everyday people trying to, earn our keep a roof over our heads, get our kids through schools, keep our public schools open and functioning, have air to breathe, and healthy food on the table. These are the everyday struggles that are actually becoming harder and harder to deal with. And, in my experience as a medical doctor and mother, I was driven out of the clinic upstream to the things that are literally making us sick in so many ways. And I say I'm now practicing political medicine because it's the mother of all illnesses, and we got to fix this one in order to cope with the things that are literally killing us in our economy, our ecology, our democracy, our expanding wars, the attack on our civil liberties. These are fundamentally political problems, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look around and see that these struggles are not moving forward. They are certainly getting more difficult and daunting all the time. At the same time, people are engaging and beginning to fight these battles at the community level in a way that is so exciting right now. There is more reason than ever for us to run a campaign that brings the struggles of our frontline communities into the front lines of the presidential election. Let's make this thing relevant to our lives, and let's insert into it the power, the transformative power of what's going on in our communities.
So are those struggles that you're seeing across the country, is that what you perceive as the cure to the cancer that seems to have infected our political system?
Very much so. The movement that is sweeping the country and the world, for that matter, really is a movement fundamentally for democracy and for justice. And those are the two cures that we very badly need. We are struggling on many fronts to keep our schools open, to protect public education, to stop the charterization of our schools. Seattle, is leading the way in resisting the the high stakes testing, and that forces young people down the school to prison pipeline, that batters teachers with a very unfair standard, so that if they're working in challenged school systems, they are paying the price for that, because that's really what these tests reflect. They reflect social privilege and circumstance more than anything else. So Seattle's been leading the way on that charge. So many communities are fighting now to protect our air and water, to stop the coal trains, and to stop the Arctic exploration. And big shout out to Shell No and the wonderful work that Seattle is doing there to try to resist this plunge over the cliff of climate catastrophe that the Arctic exploration represents. The communities from Indigenous, the Indigenous resistance, the resistance in Denton, Texas, where right there in the heart of oil country, everyday people passed overwhelmingly a referendum to ban fracking after it had been in effect actually for decades. So it was a huge move for them to do that. They received incredible public support, banned fracking. Now Texas passed a law banning the ban on fracking, and other legislatures are beginning to do this as well. So there is a fight ahead of us. There's a fight actually that's in full swing right now, and there's a very strong uprising to fight these fights. And the overarching issue is democracy, grassroots democracy, justice, and sustainability. Our unifying theme, the motto we often use, is people, planet, and peace over profit. And the trick, in my view, is for us to work together around that broader agenda. We can't actually solve any of these issues unless we solve all of them. We need a truly holistic and encompassing solution in order to fix this. They want us to be divided and conquered, to work only on one issue, and to be afraid to, quote, get political. Getting political is a dangerous thing for the status quo. And they have all kinds of mythologies out there to prevent us from, quote, getting political. What getting political means, essentially, is asserting our power to actually change things. Barring that, these are exercises in, futility, really, to fight these battles and not do them together. So it's about building coalitions that it actually takes to push these victories forward, and to do that in a way which is lasting, which is not just here today, gone tomorrow, a campaign for one cycle. It's about actually building political power, which requires a political party. I myself was very allergic to the concept of political parties for most of my life, and discovered it essentially only after everything else had failed, as an advocate, as a concerned citizen, as a mother, as a physician, working every channel out there to every last ounce of my ability. I began to realize that we were only backsliding faster and faster. At that time, in my own personal history, many of these groups came together in my home state of Massachusetts to pass campaign finance reform, to actually pass public funding, which we passed. The legislature wasn't going to pass it. We did it as a referendum, passed it overwhelmingly by a 2-to-1 margin. And within a year, the legislature, which was overwhelmingly Democratic by an 85% majority, turned around and they repealed on a voice vote our law creating public financing. That, to me, was the last straw that said we are not going to achieve political change under the status quo, corporate-sponsored political parties. So therein is my pitch for why we need to establish an independent third force, which is part of what our campaign is about. It's not only a campaign for the White House. It's not only a campaign on the critical issues for jobs as a human right, jobs at living wages with the right to form unions, for healthcare as a human right, for education as a human right, pre-K, I should say, through graduate school. We believe in abolishing the debt. We abolished it for the banker predators who caused this crisis. How about we abolish the debt for the students who are the victims of that crisis? And we also are advocating for free public higher education as a human right, for downsizing the military and bringing these resources back to real security here at home. And finally, as part of all of this, transforming the economy from a fossil fuel and war-based economy to a green economy of the future. Doing so not only puts us back to work, full employment, everybody has a good and meaningful job, it also turns the tide on climate change, which we can do if we actually put our mind to it. We converted to a war economy after the bombing of Pearl Harbor in the course of 6 months. We can certainly convert to a green economy in the course of 10 years. We're actually calling for 100% clean renewable energy by 2030. But this package of greening the economy, we call the package the Green New Deal. It's the centerpiece of our campaign and of actually the Green Party and many of our campaigns. It's a cure, as I said, for the economy, for the climate crisis and the environmental crisis. It also makes wars for oil obsolete, and it removes any justification for this rampant worldwide militarism, which is only growing. So it cures the military problem. And the final piece of this that few people understand is that it actually is a health solution as well. We know from careful studies, and we also know from a real-world experiment in Cuba when their pipeline went down, their health was transformed for the cost of $0 because suddenly they had to convert to a healthy, plant-based, local, fresh food system. They had to use forms of transportation that were active and not passive. And finally, their pollution went away because they didn't have fuel to burn. So you put those three things together, what happened was within 5 years, their death rates from diabetes went down 50%. Their death rates from heart disease and stroke went down 25 to 35%. All-cause mortality went down about 18%. Obesity rates went down 50%. And all of this happened at the cost of $0. Zero. We spend $3 trillion a year, not one, not two, $3 trillion. That's 3 times as much as we spend on the military-industrial security complex. We are spending on what's not a healthcare system. It's a disease care system that only makes us sicker and makes us go broke. We can actually fix this in one fell swoop with a system, a Green New Deal, that actually implements health at the level of our communities. At the same time, it rescues our economy, our climate, and our foreign policy. So what's not to love about that? So this is the basis of our campaign, and it only becomes more urgent by the day. And in my experience, people increasingly not only understand this, but are demanding this. This is what fundamentally people are calling for in poll after poll. So, I think we're at a really exciting moment right now where dire necessity meets transformative possibility. And hold on to your hat.
So you partly answered this already, but what is your response to, I have many friends and acquaintances who are completely against participating in the electoral system. They see that as just perpetuating the current status quo. What's your response to that?
I think those friends are doing the Koch brothers such a favor by basically acting out. The Koch brothers, the bankers, the pharmaceutical companies, you name it. The people who choose to sit on the sidelines are fundamentally taking their marching orders here from the current economic elite, the oligarchy, the predators who rely on our being disempowered and self-disempowered as well. And there's an enormous propaganda campaign out there which is telling us every day, many times a day, that the system is corrupt and therefore back off, don't mess with it. When actually the solution is exactly the opposite. The system is corrupt. We need to occupy it, own it, and transform it. democracy isn't perfect, but it's the only system we've got. It gives us a fighting chance. We need to get in there and fight. Look at what happened under, for example, Richard Nixon, who's kind of my favorite example here, because the system was extremely corrupt, and he was an extremely corrupt, repressive ruler, autocrat. What did we accomplish under Richard Nixon? We basically told him where to go, and we took power into our own hands in the streets, nonviolently. We accomplished the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, established the EPA, got women's right to choose, and ended the war in Vietnam, all under this terrible right-wing fascist government. That, to me, speaks volumes. It really says where the power is. It's not who's sitting in the White House. It's who's sitting in and standing out and marching in the streets. It's time for political engagement. The chickens have come home to roost here, and we are perched really on the precipice of some very serious business ahead, just to look at the climate, to look at the expanding wars, the clampdown on our civil liberties. It's very important for us to engage, and not only engage locally, but to engage across the silos of our issues, to engage across the boundaries of our states and our nations, because you put us all together, we are an absolutely unstoppable force. The oligarchy out there, the predators, want us to feel hopeless and powerless. But the minute we flick the switch in our own brains to recognize that we are the 99%, we are the majority, we are the future of the planet and the only future that we have, we've got to take it into our own hands. They're not going to do it for us. We know how to do that. There's a saying from the world of biology by the famous scientist Louis Pasteur that goes, the chance favors the prepared mind. Chance favors the prepared mind. There's an analogy to that in the realm of history, which is that history favors the prepared political movement. We have a blueprint for what needs to happen. We have the benefit of history. We know how to build it, and we have vibrant, activated, energized social movements at the level of our communities now. It's all about our getting together and asserting our political power. We have a social movement. We need to partner that with a political movement. This is what's happening in Europe, where austerity got bad enough that people really engaged. Not only did they get out in the street, but after years of demonstrating and marching, in Greece, for example, they said, well, it's time for us to do more than march and go home. We need to also march ourselves right into Parliament. We need to march ourselves into the halls of power. We've got the numbers to do it. We've got a game plan for going forward. That's what they did. The battle is fully engaged. It's not over. We need the rest of Europe to do that too. But this is coming our way. We are on that trajectory of austerity. We are on that trajectory of resistance and transformation. The minute we all do it, it's a whole new ballgame.
I was moved watching your kickoff speech to your exploratory committee for the 2016 campaign that you began with talking about the Black Lives Matter movement. Can you talk about the importance of that movement?
It really is, I think, the movement of our age. It is the inspiration. It is the desperation. It's where those things come together. It represents, I think, the historic, assertion of justice against a society founded on racism, an economy that continues to exercise unconscionable racist bias. It's about the racist foundations of our justice system, our injustice system, I should say, our criminal injustice system that basically captures 1 out of every 3 African American men and holds them hostage in prison on parole or probation, and then denies them their voting rights, the capacity to find housing and to find work. This is an extremely reprehensible, racist apartheid system. And it's very important that we bring that to a halt. It's remarkable that the technology of our age has enabled us to really see this in full force. I think, in the African American community, nobody would say that this is new. This is the continued playing out of Jim Crow, of the slavery mentality, or I should say the slaveholders mentality and a slave master's society that we've seen in these videotapes of Walter Scott, of Freddie Gray, Eric Garner. These are just unspeakable tragedies. So the movement for change is an extremely inspired one. The Black Lives Matter movement is extremely inspired, and we have so much to learn from it. It is calling for transformative solutions at the level of our communities, for prosecutors who are ready on hand, that don't need to be appointed as special prosecutors, so that every death at the hands of police is automatically investigated. They're calling for citizen review boards that have the power to hire and fire not only police, but also the commissioners. We're calling for a drawdown on the arms and the armed mentality of our police forces. We've become a garrisoned state in our communities, and we need to transform policing so that it is something that protects our communities, and we need to transform our justice system so that it truly achieves justice and not revenge and retribution, which is sort of what it's become. That justice needs to be not only in the criminal system, it needs to be in the economy, because if we are asserting economic violence, if economic violence is being waged against an entire race and class of people, then then community violence is inevitable. We need to remove the violence. We need to establish a full employed and educated and healthy basis for society. And to my mind, that is the lesson of the Black Lives Matter movement and campaign. So that's why we lead with it, because it is leading us as a society to a better place.
How much, speaking for yourself and the Green Party, how much do you see the role of the Green Party in leading versus following and supporting? Because, for instance, sticking with the Black Lives Matter example, numerous leaders in that movement are basically asking those of us who are white and privileged to please come out and support them and stand behind them, but don't feel the need to go up and grab the megaphone, as we so traditionally do.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's a lesson in humility and self-awareness. This is something that everyone, needs to be able to do, to be in partnership, whether it's in our families, in our relationships with our kids, with our neighbors. We need to learn how to live together as a community and not as a dominant force, and that's a real problem. And a lot of people who, who seek political power, don't know that. And, that's why one of my lessons, I think, in the last campaign was that it's really important for anyone who seeks political office to spend time as a prisoner incarcerated, because you learn a lot about what our system of power does and is like. But to your larger point, yes, and the purpose of our campaign is actually to lift up the voices of resistance and transformation in our communities. It is to bring these front lines of struggle where there is so much courage and so much vision. We need to bring those voices and those struggles into the front lines of presidential discourse. The presidential race should not be about self-important people with oversized egos going behind closed doors with big spenders and big funders and making deals. That's essentially what elections are about. And we need to turn that on its head and make elections an empowering process for everyday people who are fighting the everyday battles on the front lines of our communities.
So just a few minutes left. So you are you formed an exploratory committee. What is the next? What are the next steps that you are looking for in the exploration?
For the big players, the big power players, when they are exploring, what that means is they're going behind closed doors and exploring what kind of money they can raise. For us, exploring is all about connecting with the frontline communities, with Black Lives Matter, with Shama Sawant's campaign, with the students, the 40 million students who are in debt and trying to get out of it, and reaching out. And that's what we've been doing over the course of this exploratory campaign, a couple months. We've been basically reaching out. And I do want to make a note right now by way of reaching out. And this also speaks to the larger question of how do we move forward? How do we go here from where we are as a small grassroots campaign to building the movement? It's, in my view, it's really about doing that outreach. It's about connecting and creating a structure whereby we continue to connect and we continue to build. And we also use the resources of a presidential election to do that building and to lift up those voices. So I want to mention right now that there are 40 million millennials who are in debt, who are carrying around college debt, disabling college debt, and have very little opportunity to pay it back, considering the jobs that are available and the only jobs that will be available for the foreseeable future, that is part-time, temporary, low-wage jobs. We have essentially a generation of indentured servants with no escape route. It's really important for people to recognize that we can abolish that debt. 40 million young people, if they chose to come out on Election Day in 2016 and check the box, the green box, which will mean abolish your debt and make public higher education free, we could accomplish that. If that word were to get out and that constituency alone were to come out and vote, it would be an absolutely transformative election. 40 million millennials could actually win a three-way race. And that's the kind of word that we're going to be getting out. We will be establishing campus chapters on hundreds of campuses around the country. Go to our website, by the way, jill2016.com, and get connected. We will soon be making an announcement, so stand by on the status of the campaign, and I would say get involved. Once we are a full campaign, we are eligible for matching funds and for funding through the FEC, which will help us get jump-started. We are also a party to 2 court cases, which are both very close to filing now. These court cases will force the Commission on Presidential Debates to actually be inclusive debates, to allow voters the right to know who their choices are, because voters are screaming for more choices besides the 2 corporate puppets. And had this choice been available in the last election, there would have been 4 people in those debates, including Gary Johnson of the Libertarians and myself. These would have been much more meaningful and exciting debates. And I'll just mention that when I was first tricked into running for office back in the year 2002, I was running for governor against Mitt Romney, and we fought our way into the debates where I basically voiced the agenda that we've been talking about here today, that everyday people talk about around their kitchen and their dining room tables. I articulated that agenda. It was completely ignored inside the debate room. And when we emerged from the TV studio into the waiting press area, I was mobbed by the press, who said I had won the debate on the instant online viewer poll. And to me, it made the point. We have won already in the court of public opinion. It's time for us to get organized and exercise that victory. Go to jill2016.com and join the team.
All right. Well, with that, we are unfortunately out of time. I want to thank you very much for coming and spending time with us this morning.
It's been great talking with you, Mike, as always. Thank you so much.